Kendrick Lamar's halftime show was a masterclass in capturing a cultural moment and making socially relevant commentary entertaining for a mass audience. But I want to zero in on one line that I'm seeing a lot of chatter about, and that is his comment on 40 acres and a mule. Sherman participates in the March to the Sea, taking orders from General Ulysses Grant to seize Atlanta and Savannah, Georgia, essentially splitting Confederate forces in half and breaking the South. This march, ultimately, is one of the deciding factors of the war. It crushes the Southern industrial base in Atlanta. It leaves this 6-mile wide swatch of burned earth as Sherman just rips up everything that's not bolted down, seizes everything that is on the land, considering it war materials to supply his army, and most notably, liberating every slave between he and Savannah, Georgia. Now, these slaves had nowhere to go, and freedmen didn't want to stay on the plantations that were basically gone by the time Sherman was done with them. And so what happens is a lot of them take their families and join Sherman's baggage train. They become support staff and some even fighting men for Sherman's army, newly liberated and paid employees of the U.S. government. And Sherman, over the course of his march, comes to respect them, comes to admire them, and comes to understand them in ways that he hadn't before. He proposes a form of payment, a bonus that would be paid out at the end of the war as a way to thank them for their service for his army and begin a process of restoring the South to some sense of normal order without a dominant planter class that monopolized all the land. Hence, 40 acres and a mule. The plan is simple. Divide former slave plantation land into 40-acre plots and then divide the pack animals on that land into sections that you could place one pack animal per plot and then place the families, those formerly enslaved people now freed, on that land that they would own. Lincoln likes the idea, and there's a lot of chatter in Congress among the radical Republicans about how to best hold the South accountable and bring African Americans, newly citizenized, into the Union as full citizens, as full economic participants, as free people. And Sherman's idea of starting them off with some land they're already familiar with, land they already know how to work, would be a great way to get them a way to build wealth and build a life for themselves. And then Lincoln goes down. Lincoln is taken down by John Wilkes Booth, and his vice president does the old switcheroo. Andrew Johnson rug pulls a lot of the promises Lincoln had made and a lot of the promises that his generals had made to the fighting men who served under them. The 40 acres and a mule order was dropped early, and families found themselves from owning land very briefly to being evicted off it, and the planter class returned to near full power. What replaces this early form, this early experiment of reparations for the damage of slavery is the sharecropping and convict leasing system that reinforced slavery and brought it back with a new guise. The 13th Amendment outlaws slavery officially, except under one condition: as punishment for a crime. Therefore, those that had not committed crimes but found themselves unhoused and unemployed wound up in sharecropping operations, going back to underpaid menial labor on the plantations that used to own them. And those who could be convicted under drummed up, often completely fictitious charges found themselves literally re-enslaved into the prison industrial complex that was selling these workers out, literally renting their labor to plantations, to lumber operations, and to coal mining plants. Kendrick managed to talk the NFL into paying for a protest song, and it, like so much of his work, brings this historical weight behind it and demands us to pay attention to the world around us and how much has changed and how much hasn't. But what do you think? What are some of the other little things you noticed in his performance that stood out to you? What was your favorite or most interesting part of the halftime show? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time.